Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. US President Donald Trump signs legislation to end the longest US government shutdown in history, hours after the House votes to restore services and pay federal workers. The bill passes 222 to 209, with Trump keeping Republicans united as Democrats protest the lack of a deal on health subsidies. The White House says President Trump did nothing wrong after Democrats release email suggesting he knew of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse and spent time with the victim. Trump dismisses the disclosures as a hoax and accuses Democrats of using the Epstein case to distract from the shutdown. India says the car explosion that killed over 8 in Delhi is now a terror incident, with police examining possible links to 2 Kashmiri doctors and 5 others previously held with arms and explosives. Officials have made no new arrests but vow to bring the attackers to justice as the investigation expands. G7 foreign ministers call for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine and reaffirm their unwavering support for Kiev's territorial integrity. The group also condemns surging violence in Sudan, warning that the Army-RSF war has created the world's largest humanitarian crisis. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says he hopes Washington will avoid any actions that could further escalate the war in Ukraine. He says President Trump has shown interest in dialogue and a sustainable peace and urges the US to let common sense guide its next steps. Israeli President Isaac Herzog and top military officials condemn shocking and serious attacks by Jewish settlers on Palestinians in the West Bank. Herzog urges an end to the growing wave of violence, adding a rare, forceful voice to otherwise muted official criticism. President Isaac Herzog says he received a letter from President Trump urging him to consider pardoning Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is on trial for corruption. Trump calls the case political and unjustified, while Netanyahu maintains his innocence and has pleaded not guilty. At least 37 people are dead and dozens injured after a bus fell into a ravine in Peru's Arequipa region, with most victims dying at the scene. Local officials say it's the worst bus accident in years, marking another tragedy on Latin America's mountain roads. Those are the headlines of the hour, but we start in the United States for our top story. And US President Donald Trump has signed legislation ending the longest government shutdown in US history. Roughly 2 hours after the House of Representatives voted to restart disrupted food assistance, pay hundreds of thousands of federal workers, and revive a hobbled air traffic control system. The Republican-controlled chamber passed the package by a vote of 222 to 209, with Trump's support largely keeping his party together in the face of vehement opposition from House Democrats, who are angry that a long standoff launched by their Senate colleagues failed to secure a deal to extend federal health insurance subsidies. Trump also accused Democrats of extortion attempt during the government shutdown and noted that the Republicans will never allow that to happen. Let's listen in to what President Trump had to say.
Today we're sending a clear message that we will never give in to extortion, because that's what it was. They tried to extort, the Democrats tried to extort our country in just some families. So I just want to tell the American people, you should not forget this. When we come up to midterms and other things, don't forget what they've done to our country. I also want to happen again. So with my signature, the federal government will now resume normal operations, and my administration and our partners in Congress will continue our work to lower the cost of living, restore public safety, grow our economy, and make America affordable again for all Americans again.
Now, US House Speaker Mike Johnson has called the recent government shutdown as utterly pointless and foolish, accusing Democrats of using Americans as leverage in a failed political tactic. Johnson noted that the outcome was totally foreseeable and criticised the opposition for causing disruptions to paychecks, flights and food security. Let's listen in to the US House Speaker.
Well, good evening, everybody. We feel very relieved tonight. The Democrat shutdown is finally over, thanks to House and Senate Republicans who stood together to get the job done. Absolutely no question in anybody's mind now that the Democrats were responsible for this. What happened? Millions of American families went without food on their table. You had millions of Americans stranded in airports with their flights canceled and delayed. You had troops and federal employees wondering where their next paycheck would come from. The Democrats openly admitted, many of them said it in their own words, that they used the American people as leverage in this political game. I want to say that all this was utterly pointless and foolish. This outcome was totally foreseeable. I said that this would be the outcome when all this began back in mid-September. They did it anyway. Democrats admitted that they used the people as leverage, and they got nothing for their selfish political stunt here. They didn't achieve anything with.
Meanwhile, US House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says that Democrats will continue to fight to lower the high cost of living and address the healthcare crisis that Republicans have created. Let's listen in to Hakeem Jeffries.
We will continue to fight to lower the high cost of living. House Democrats will continue to fight to address the healthcare crisis that Republicans have created. And House Democrats will continue to fight to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for tens of millions of Americans. This fight is not over. We're just getting started. And there's only two ways that this fight will end. Only two ways, Mr. Speaker, that this fight will end. Either Republicans finally decide to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits this year, or the American people will throw Republicans out of their jobs next year and end the speakership of Donald J. Trump once and for all. That's how this fight ends.
Shruti Dasgupta joins us now. She's an international affairs expert and she joins us live from New Delhi to discuss the top story of the hour. Shruti, the longest government shutdown in US history has ended, but at what cost for both the US president and Congress?
Well, this 43-day shutdown has come to no real change in policy. The Republicans did not have to change any major decisions that they had passed. I believe a small footnote in that bill that they have passed is that at least the people that were fired during this lockdown will get their jobs back and will get their furloughed leave or probably pay and all of that. But there has been no other change in policy with regards to what the Republicans were doing and the Democrats wanted to change. What did this bill show us? It showed us that the Democrats themselves have divided because there was cross-voting. Two Republicans three formerly used to be voting for the Democrats, which kind of bolstered their numbers. But 6 Democrats this time voted to fund the government. So there are internal fractures that are happening inside the Democrat Party itself. There's an infighting that seems to be in the undercurrent of it. I do know that it is a good news for a lot of Americans because the ATCs will start working, the airports that were facing delays, canceled flights, they would start being operational. People who had gone without pay, at least 730,000 people were working without pay. They'll get their paychecks, and about 600,000 were furloughed, and they would then now be able to come back to job. But this is going to take a little bit more. Some would report by Thursday, and most would come in the next few weeks back to their desk duties. But it does show that the Republicans have a strong control on the narrative of what America is going to face, and the Democrats have to get their act together. No matter what big words the Democrats float now, it just shows to us that they are unable to pull off the numbers that can stall or force the Trump regime to agree to their demands, be it the tax credit or the medical aid they have not been able to make Trump regime bow to their needs, and the Trump administration has shown flexed its muscles in the face of Democrats.
Yes, and Shruti, of course, President Trump said the Democrats engaged in extortion. House Speaker Mike Johnson called it the Democrat shutdown. However, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said this fight is not over. Are we looking at another major funding crisis just weeks from now, do you think?
Well, yeah, because this will only float the government up till the 30th of January 2026. They will need to pass another funding bill at that particular time. So it goes to see how the power dynamics change in the couple of weeks that come forth. The Democrats were holding the nation hostage, not really. They wanted a few policy changes, which the Trump regime did not condone in any way or form. They wanted healthcare and they wanted a tax credit system to continue, and these things both did not be in favor of what the Republican regime is wanting as of now. So you can phrase it either way. The Republicans are holding Americans hostages and Democrats bowed and cross-voted, or the Democrats were holding the Americans hostage and the Republicans managed to steal a few and get the voting through. So it is either which way, but what does end up hurting is the American public, while the policymakers iron out their differences in the worst possible way while they fly their private helicopters and private planes. The common man is stranded and faces shortage of food. The SNAP program was suffering. People on food stamps were suffering. And it is difficult to find the right way to project a government shutdown, even if, although Donald Trump has asked Republicans to take away the filibuster that allows the government funding to be questioned by the Senate, I don't see that being repealed, because then it would give any ruling government unprecedented powers without the consensus of both houses. So I do believe there is a larger political showdown in the future of America, especially with the midterms coming next year. But as of now, the Republicans have won the show, and they will continue to build the policies that focuses on their core voters.
Okay, Shruti, do stay with us. We have further updates. We move on now, and US President Donald Trump has slammed Democrats for releasing emails about his alleged links to Jeffrey Epstein. Trump accused Democrats of bringing up Jeffrey Epstein's files to deflect from what they have done on the shutdown. This comes as House Democrats released emails which they said released new questions about President Donald Trump's relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and how much he knew about his abuse of underage girls. Meanwhile, the White House also accused Democrats in the House of Representatives of releasing emails from convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein to smear President Donald Trump. According to the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, the Democrats selectively leaked emails to the media to create a fake narrative. Let's listen in to Caroline Leavitt, the White House spokesperson.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep.
Now we move on, and Canada's Foreign Minister Anita Anand has said that she met bilaterally with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio to discuss Ukraine, efforts to advance peace in the Middle East, and the crisis in Haiti and Arabic Arctic sovereignty. Anita added that the two had also participated in several joint sessions over the past day and a half, using the meetings to coordinate on shared foreign policy priorities. Let's listen in.
I met bilaterally with Secretary Rubio, yes, and I also was obviously with him in multiple sessions throughout the past day and a half. In our bilateral meeting, we discussed a number of issues: the illegal war in Ukraine, a path to peace in the Middle East, and how we can work together in order to push forward that peace the ongoing crisis in Haiti, on which we have worked substantially over the last number of months, and Arctic sovereignty.
However, Anand stated that both countries have reaffirmed their commitment to Ukraine's long-term prosperity, security and defence. Let's take a listen in to some more statements.
First, we reaffirmed our commitment to Ukraine's long-term prosperity, security and defence. Canada has made it a priority of our G7 presidency to maintain and strengthen our support for Ukraine at every opportunity. Today, alongside Minister Sybiha, I announced new sanctions against Russia to target those who are financing Putin's illegal war.
Now, on the other hand, Russia's Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, has said that he hoped Washington would take no actions liable to escalate the Ukraine conflict. Lavrov added that US President Donald Trump had long pushed for dialogue with Russia, sought a full understanding of Russia's stance on Ukraine, and showed dedication to achieving a lasting peaceful solution. Joining us once again is Shruti Dasgupta. She's an international affairs expert. Shruti, how do Canada's and the United States foreign policy align, especially with the Trump administration and, of course, Carney as Prime Minister?
Well, even before Carney, even during the Trudeau era, the policies were very much aligned with the US and EU regarding Russia and its Ukraine war. So this is not new. This is very much continuance of a former policy. And right now, what Anand has done, she has reaffirmed the ban on 11 entities and 13 individuals as part of the November sanctions that were passed by USA under pressure by EU themselves. So those sanctions have been adopted by Canada, and this is something which is very normal. All the Western nations are combining their political power and pull and push behind Ukraine to stop the advances of Russia into the region. Now, beyond that, I see USA is not really very clear on how it wants the war to stop. They have kind of hedged both ways. Trump has hailed Putin as a great leader, but has also understood that he's not very easily manipulated. And the war is not that simple. In fact, I think we spoke after the Alaska meet where we remarked at how tired he looked after the negotiations were done, and how the lunch or dinner, whatever it was at that particular time, the meal was cancelled, and Putin just simply went off after the meeting. So it shows that Trump is unable to arm twist his way into peace in this particular conflict. And so the sanctions have been coming down on Russia and other nations associated. However, I do marvel at the duplicity of their sanctions, because you see, my nation, India, suffers sanctions, but Germany gets what do you call a reprieve from those sanctions, because while they have natural gas and pipeline coming right down from Russia, and that reprieve goes into 2026, 2027. If Hungary gets its reprieve till 2026, and this exemption came right in 2025 now. Austria gets till January 2027. So a lot of EU nations are getting reprieve from sanctions. They're allowed to deal with Russia and its oil and its energy supplies and other trades, while India and China and other nations that are working towards ensuring their economies are doing better face US sanctions. So there is a double-faced conversation that is there with the European nations, the USA as well as Canada now in the same basket. While they will grant their friends sanctions, they will kind of hobble their competitors in the geopolitical world with sanctions in the name of Russia.
Yes, Shruti, do stay with us. We have further updates from the battlefield from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, where Moscow's defense ministry has reported that the Ukrainian army has lost roughly 1,150 troops in battles with Russian forces across all frontline areas over the past 24 hours. According to reports, the Ukrainian army has lost over 100 troops and an electronic warfare station in the responsibility area of Russia's Battle Group North. around 215 troops and armoured combat vehicles in the responsibility area of Battleground West, and approximately 75 troops, a tank and 3 armoured combat vehicles in the responsibility area battle group of the South. During the last 24-hour period, the Ukrainian army also lost roughly 450 troops and 9 armoured combat vehicles in the responsibility area of Russia's battle group center, and around 250 troops and an armoured combat vehicle in the responsibility area of battle group east, and around 60 troops and 5 jamming stations in the responsibility area of the battle group of the Dnipro area. Okay, Shruti joins us once again. Shruti, these figures that we've just mentioned, of course, they're extremely high over the past 24 hours. How credible are these numbers from Russia's defense ministry, and why does Russia publish them so aggressively?
Well, these numbers are high, but this has been the trend throughout the war, which is why there has been so much EU backing. Ukraine on its own is no longer able to sustain the war, and that's why these sanctions are coming down hard and fast. The conversation around this war is there is a reason why Trump tabled the format of land for peace for Ukraine, because he knows that until and unless European forces are now involved in this war, Ukraine doesn't have much manpower left. I do believe that this is the general trend of the war. During its peak times, they have lost about 6,000 to 7,000 a week. So this is something along the very same lines. And with the winter setting in and the energy crisis that is happening in the rolling blackouts and the energy crisis in Ukraine, thanks to the targeting of energy sector on both sides, while Russia's energy sector is targeted, it has alternate sources coming through to help its citizens out. But Ukraine, being smaller and its energy targets are limited, it is going to face a very, very tough winter again as the war comes close to its 4th year. And so it seems that the publishing of numbers is a reality check, I believe, from the Russian side to not just Ukraine, to all of Europe. In fact, US itself, that's why the statement earlier by Lavrov that US should wonder twice before trying to interfere directly, because these numbers show exactly that story, that Ukraine is unable to sustain this war on its own, and a smarter, faster peace, land for peace kind of a declaration would save its population as well as its resources from further Russian attacks. However, if the war does continue, other nations will have to be probably involved if the war is to continue, or Ukraine as an entity will find itself at the doorstep of complete economic as well as political collapse. So these numbers show exactly that story that the Russia is trying to sell to you. Of course, we do not know the numbers that Russia has lost, and that's why the story is half done. We would love to see what the Ukrainian forces claim, that in exchange for these 1,500 soldiers and so many equipment and losses that they have taken, what they have managed to hit on Russia back at.
Yes, Shruti Dasgupta, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. We now move on over to South America, and students, unions and social groups have participated in a march in Quito, Ecuador, calling to vote no in the referendum proposed by Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa. On November the 16th, Ecuadorians will vote in a referendum on 4 key issues, allowing foreign military bases, convening a constituent assembly to draft a new constitution, eliminating state funding for political parties, and reducing the number of assembly members. Ecuadorians are demonstrating to vote no over the possible return of foreign military bases. Let's in fact listen into what some protesters had to say.
Está en riesgo una constitución que le molesta precisamente al poder. Quieren volver a esa vieja constitución del 98, neoliberal, y que favorecía a los sectores pudientes. Por eso,
aquí estamos en defensa del presupuesto universitario, en defensa de la gratuidad de la educación superior. No vamos a permitir que un presidente indolente y que nació en Miami pretenda quitarnos este derecho que lo conseguimos en las calles.
Este 16 de noviembre le decimos no a Daniel Noboa Primero porque entendemos que es una consulta que se gasta alrededor de 60 millones, que bien es cierto se pudieron haber distribuido a otras necesidades urgentes del...
We're now joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute and he joins us live from Tokyo. Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us. Why is the presence of foreign troops such a sensitive issue still in Latin America?
Indeed, this is a direct link with the law and order issue and the drug issue. The Ecuador is a country located between the Colombia and Peru, so that's why the two neighbors had a drug problem originally. But when the U.S. military base in Manta in the Ecuador is located, that time these U.S. troops sending many reconnaissance plane and checks drug cartels move, so that's why indeed the drug do not come to the Ecuador even if they are just between the two drug affected countries. So that's why that time the drug issue was not a big problem for Ecuador. But after that, the left-wing government swung in and pushed this U.S. base out. And since this U.S. withdrawal from the Ecuador, the drug flow into the Ecuador and the law and order has deteriorated at a very drastic pace. For example, the murder incident has increased 5 times bigger. So that's why this was a very dangerous place at that time. Of course, now under the new president, they try to improve, but one of the solutions is regain the U.S. base in Ecuador. So instead of the Manta, they are suggesting Galapagos Island, and if the U.S. use it, they can deploy the reconnaissance plane and check the drugs ship and improve the law and order in the Ecuador. The Ecuador government is expecting. View from the left-wing people in the country, or the view from the drug cartel-supported people, of course, this is not welcome. So that's why some people try to refuse this. But view from the law and order issue, someone should take charge, and the Ecuador armed forces and police hasn't been the enough level to cracking down the drug cartel. View from this reality, indeed accepting foreign base is one of the solutions. So that's why this is a good choice, and many people believe it, but at the same time, some part of the people still do not have the will to accept it. And that is the situation, I think.
Yes, Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to have you on the programme. Now we move over to Europe, and Cardiff will host the opening match of the 2028 European Football Championships on June the 9th, while London's Wembley Stadium will stage the final a month later on July the 9th. The announcement came from UEFA on Wednesday, confirming that the tournament will be co-hosted by England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland. Matches will be held across 9 venues in 8 cities, including Birmingham, Dublin, Glasgow, Liverpool, Manchester and Newcastle. UEFA President Alexander Ceferin attended the official launch in London, where a small protest took place outside. Demonstrators voiced opposition to Israel's participation in UEFA events. Police were present, but the event continued without any disruption. UEFA says the Euro 2028 is expected to generate around £3.6 billion in economic benefits for the UK and Ireland between 2028 and 2031. Meanwhile, Belfast will host the Euro 2028 qualifying draw in December of 2026. England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales will take part in qualifying, with 2 automatic places available if any of the hosts fail to qualify. England were runners-up at Euro 2024, while Scotland exited in the group stage. Wales and Ireland missed out on that tournament entirely. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.